Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here today, and I am here to review The Gorge. This is a new Apple original movie, and you can definitely tell. Speaking of tell, this movie stars Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. It also stars Sigourney Weaver and this other guy who's in it for like 5 minutes. And it's all about these two snipers who are put in charge of watching over the gorge on the opposite sides of it in these watchtowers. And they have to kill these zombie monsters that are trying to get out of it and contain them, make sure that they don't escape and that they don't take over the world and start an apocalypse. And then they fall in love, and they go back and forth, and yeah. You could probably imagine everything else that happens in this movie, because literally everything that happens is just straight out of a fill-in-the-blank Hollywood movie playbook. I'm not surprised that this movie didn't go to theaters. I know that a lot of people, they thought that the Salem's Lot remake wasn't good enough to be in theaters. I highly disagree. I think that you can clearly tell the difference between a movie like that and a movie like this. This movie, it doesn't even really feel like a movie. It feels like a product. It feels like slop, more Hollywood slop, and it was just dumped out onto Apple Plus. Who cares about Apple TV Plus? Nobody wants that. And nobody wants to watch this movie because this movie is the definition of forgettable, cliche, bland. I mean, you can tell by the poster. I mean, the poster for this movie is so generic and it is so lifeless and dull. It's like it was made by AI or something. So, let's get into the actual movie. I gotta say, in the first act, I was starting to like it, and it was sad because I was like, okay, I can see what could have been a great movie. Like, it kind of felt like an interesting concept of, like, these snipers who've got to contain the monsters in this gorge. Like, that's kind of an interesting idea, and you could do a lot with that and do a lot of psychological horror, do something like they did with The Lighthouse, but instead they just did every single thing that you would have expected. They did every single thing that you would have, like, thought that would happen. Nothing in it is surprising. Nothing in it is memorable. And in the first act, though, they did a lot more psychological stuff. They did a lot more stuff, like they had all the snipers from the past, which all the snipers get killed at the end of protecting the gorge, at the end of their post or watch or whatever. They all get killed one by one so that they don't tell anyone, I guess, about what's going on there. And they all wrote, like, inscriptions on the wall behind the bookcase, and I thought, like, stuff like that was cool, was interesting. It was like, okay, this could be something that's, like, really, really, like, subtle and slow, like a slow burn. You could go really, really hard with, like, I mean, there was this part where they showed the zombies climbing up the gorge, and I thought, this is kind of scary, this is kind of creepy. This could be really, really good, because they had that short little sequence where we got to first see them climb up the gorge, but after that, there was no suspense, and it was just mindless video game slop. And then there was also this romance aspect. I think that the romance was another thing that was just kind of like cliche, dull, uninteresting, because, I mean, just all the stuff happened that you thought would happen. They had an intimacy-coordinated sex scene where it wasn't even really a sex scene. They didn't even really kiss. Later on in the movie, instead of kissing, they bumped their heads with each other like some kind of fucking alien weirdos. And it just, the romance was totally, totally fake and phony and bullshit. You could tell that this was just a Hollywood contrived romance. It didn't feel like a real romance at all. Because one of the keys of a romance is that you have to make the audience fall in love with the love interests. Because that's going to make the audience go, I want the character to get with her, or I want her to get with him, because I wish that was me getting with them. Like you kind of insert yourself in there, and but you can't do that in this movie because these characters are garbage. Miles Teller, I don't know what, I like Miles Teller, and I've liked him in some of the first act of this movie, but as the movie went on, he was so bad because at any time he needed to react to something, he just had the same face like this, and I know that you can't see my face, but it was this very strange, smile. There's this hilarious part where, they're in this underground laboratory, and they're viewing this, historical footage. It's really creepy, and, ooh, what's going on? There's this, infection, zombies, monsters, and Miles Teller is fucking just standing there with this giant smirk on his face. Why are you smiling? Why are you smiling in this part of the movie where it's the character, you should be what the hell? What is going on? You should have some kind of, and I know that was kind of bad, but something like that. Something where it's not I'm just going to stand here and smirk. Oh, wow, a potential apocalypse? Just stand there and smirk. And I gotta give to Anya Taylor-Joy's credit. She was okay. And she did a lot more acting than Miles Teller did in this movie. She was the one who reacted when she needed to react. Which acting, 70% of acting is reacting to shit that happens. It's not even talking. It's not even dialogue. It's reacting to the shit that happens, and Miles Teller never did it in the whole movie. Literally, the whole movie, he's got the same look on his face. He was like an NPC. He was like an NPC. He would be the greatest. I would love to sponsor Miles Teller to play poker. I'll give you Miles, if you're watching this video, I'll give you $5. If you can turn it into $5 million, half of it's yours. Because he's got the greatest poker face. He could just sit at the poker table and give you the look that he gave in this entire movie. And he would win. He's got the fucking poker face of an NPC in a fucking video game from the early fucking 2000s. I mean, it is hilarious. I mean, that part where he's reacting to this creepy footage, it kind of reminded me of, Resident Evil, the part in the Resident Evil game where they find out that Albert Wesker was a bad guy the whole time. That whole part of the game, that's what it reminded me of. And it's to think, the character who's watching this footage is smiling. It's just the most laughable, absurd thing. It's why are you smiling? I mean, he's supposed to be playing this, disturbed, really, really strung out sniper who's, all tough. He's, a tough guy. He's a macho man. He's ugh. I drink a little bit of booze before I go to bed to stop the dreams. I can't take any drugs because it'll affect my shooting. He's just, he's one of those typical, modern-day NPC macho men. Unbelievable, fake, kind of like a wannabe Rambo. It's Rambo was badass because you could tell, I mean, you wouldn't want to fuck with Rambo in real life. But I could definitely see someone fucking with Miles Teller. I mean, he got sick with COVID when he was making Top Gun 2. How fucking strong could he be? He's a fucking lightweight. He's a fucking hot dog, man. He's a fucking NPC, man, in this movie. And I feel so bad because I like Miles Teller. But I didn't like him in this movie at all. He didn't have chemistry with Anya Taylor-Joy. That might be to do with the sex police person that they hired to ruin all the on-screen, chemistry scenes like that. But it also might just have to do with the fact that he was just not the right role for not the right person for this role. So, anyways, that first act is the part that I was thinking could have been good because it was light on the action, it was light on the horror and all that stuff. It was very subtle. But then in the second act, they actually go down into the gorge. And you're thinking, oh shit, this gorge is really, really hard to escape from, and it's going to be impossible for them to even survive a minute. Oh, well, actually, to quote the pitch meeting guy, it's going to be super easy. Barely any inconveniences. Because they're there and it's like, there's like a zombie that comes out once in a while, but it's really not that hard to survive inside the gorge. It's really, really like a cakewalk for them. I mean, it's like a video game too, where they just go from place to place and it's like a mission. It's like a video game mission with the checkpoints and the cutscenes. Like this totally could have been like a terrible video game that they made in the early 2010s that you could get on the PS3, rent from fucking Blockbuster and shit, and they'd be like, look, this is the new Hollywood video game with the Hollywood actors, Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy. And by the way, Anya plays a Russian girl in this movie. She's a Russian love interest. And she plays chess. I wonder why they chose her for this role. You know what I mean? I think that they thought about that when they chose her. They thought about the Queen's Gambit. She wasn't Russian in that show, but I think she spoke it at one point. I don't know. I never finished that show. I'm not really interested in finishing that crap. But, yeah. So, anyways. That whole second act was like the worst part of the movie. But then again, that's basically the rest of the movie. Is like just cliche shit, just everything that you could comment and say what you think happens in the second and third act. They introduce all this exposition in the second act that really, really just makes you feel like I miss the Rear Window type of storytelling they had going on in the first act. A lot of no dialogue sequences where you just saw these characters looking at each other through their binoculars, writing little messages to each other, competing, like who can get the best shot off at each other, like at an object or whatever. Like, there's so many good moments in the first half, and then the rest of the movie, they just throw all of that subtlety away so that they can give you the typical CGI-filled trash that we come to expect from Hollywood. The only thing that I'm glad about, I was really worried that in the Gorge they would give, the monster's character. I was really worried that they would have, a king of the monsters, and the monsters would be talking or something like that, but no. The monsters never talk at all, thankfully. And then they get back up the gorge really, really easily. And in fact, the monster actually takes them to a location where it's really easy for them to use tools from there to escape. So it seems like this gorge is really, really not a big deal. And it just... And then in the third act, they literally give up. They give up on the movie. Because in the third act, they're like, you know what? Instead of having an intense action-filled last act where it's like we pull everything together, we bring all the characters together, we raise the stakes even higher, we raise the intensity, we make it more horror-centric again and less, like, dumbed down, like, video gamey type of action horror. Instead of doing that, they literally just give up. And they pull off kind of like a Shawshank type of thing. You know how all of a sudden Andy just escapes from Shawshank and it's like, whoa, how did he do that? And it's like, Shawshank was a masterpiece. I mean, that was really good. This was really bad. I mean, it's like all of a sudden after they got back up out of the gorge, they came up with this master plan, and then they orchestrated this whole thing to happen. It was so cringeworthy. It was so fake, phony, cheesy, just, ugh. So yeah, I hated the second and third act of this movie, and therefore I really don't care for the movie overall. There's also another hilarious part that I should mention, probably the stupidest part of the movie. The way that they're getting back up the gorge, they have this long cable, and the car is like pulling itself up through the cable, up to the top of the gorge, up the top of the cliff, and the zombies start to climb the cable, all the cable underneath their car. And so they get the bright idea that they should light the cable on fire. And keep in mind, the liquid that they're igniting is propane that's coming from out of the truck. So these fucking characters are so stupid that they light a cable on fire that is attached to the cable that's attached to their truck that could get set on fire and explode. And that's exactly what happens. They kill all the zombies. They disconnect like the cable so no more zombies can climb on the cable anymore. And then all of a sudden they explode, but nothing really happens to them. It was basically straight out of Home Alone. And as soon as I saw that sequence, I was like, yes, I am going to put up that fucking scene. Why would, Marv from Home Alone 2, why would anybody soak a rope in kerosene? And then Kevin's like, hey guys, check this out. And he lights the fucking rope on fire or whatever. Like, that's exactly what happened in this movie, except the characters themselves set their own rope on fire. I mean, you just can't make this shit up. I mean, these Hollywood movies suck so bad. And then at the end of this movie, they meet up at a cafe and they kiss, and it's just so cringe. It is so like, ugh, like, you really thought you had something here. You really thought that, like, you told a whole story and, like, you were giving us this, like, satisfying, like, complete ending, but it just felt like, ugh, like, that was such a cheap, dull, stupid ride. It was more Hollywood slop. It was more drivel. The movie looked ugly as hell. I mean, they sucked all the color out of this movie. But then they did something really weird. When they go down into the gorge, they put all the color in the movie. They have all this color. They have this colorful red fog and green fog. And it looks so colorful and beautiful. And it's like, why can't you make the whole movie colorful? Why does the whole movie have to look like a cutting board? I mean, the fucking poster for this movie looks like a poster for some sort of a cooking show, with like all this like kitchen utensils and shit on the fucking poster. But like, yeah. So this movie, in terms of food, I don't even know what to say. Honestly, like, I'm kind of at a loss in terms of food. Scott Derrickson made this movie. I don't know what he was thinking. I also gotta say something else, too. You know how people really hate on self-inserts today? Like, in movies and TV shows, like, at the slightest hint of a self-insert character, people lose their minds. They practically, like, have a full-on meltdown. But I think it's really funny because people don't realize that people have been putting self-inserts in movies since the beginning of Hollywood. And, just think about what Scott Derrickson does. He does Doctor Strange. You got that main guy. He's got spiky hair. He's got the goatee. And then you go to this movie, and who's the main character? You got Miles Teller. He's a similar body type to Scott Derrickson. He's got a goatee and he's got spiky black hair. It's the same thing. Just because Scott Derrickson isn't playing the character doesn't mean it's not a self-insert. And so I'm sick and tired of people pretending like all the Hollywood people don't use self-inserts. It's basically a difference is that the ones that are like more masked than others is like people like don't complain as much when you can't really tell. But then when you can blatantly tell, they immediately complain as if there's something inherently wrong. And I just wanted to point that out because I couldn't stop thinking about it the whole movie because so many people have been complaining about that shit nowadays, and it's getting really, like, annoying. So anyways, yeah, actually I do know. So I just did a review of Jet's Pizza, and to be honest, I really enjoyed the Jet's Pizza that I ate. But after I got done with the video, ironically, I went back to get another slice of pizza, and it was cold. Now, this is a test for good pizza, or I don't know if you can necessarily say all good pizza, because some food just doesn't work after it's cold and when it's a leftover. Some pizza, some food, it's only good when it's fresh, right out of the oven, right out of the pan. And that's what I will say about Jet's Pizza, because I had that third piece of cheese pizza, and wow, it was really bad. And that's what reminded me of this movie. It's like you have a really nice, hot, fresh slice of pizza, and you think, wow, this is really, really good. And then an hour later, you go back and you have a cold slice of the same pizza, and you realize, wow, that was really bad. How did I think that was so good? Or how did I think that it was so much better than what it actually was? Because if I had eaten it like at a room temperature or even cold, I would have said, man, this is some mediocre pizza right here. So I don't even know about like that video, because I don't know if I should count that against the pizza going forward. So yeah, anyways, enough of that. Please like this video and comment. What did you think of The Gorge? Did you like it more than me? I really wanted to like it. I was really kind of enjoying the rear window aspects of the first act. And I wanted to see more of that and less boring, generic video game action bullshit in the second and third acts. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.